Okay, this is going to be sort of a different video than I usually do. This is going to be kind of like a theory video. I'm going to look at the future of what I think, the future of Apple and iOS and Mac OS X versus the future of Microsoft, Windows, and their mobile platform, Windows Phone or Windows Mobile, whatever you want to call it. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so before I even get started, I want to say that if you guys think anything different, I'd love to hear what you guys think. I really highly encourage video responses with stuff like this. I don't really do these kind of theory, what I think videos very often. So when I do, I really like to hear what you guys have to say. So again, comments, video responses, everything is highly encouraged here. So, and with this is really just what I think. I'm not looking at any articles here. I'm not reading anything. This is just what's in my head. Because if you saw my previous video, you know by now that I have a Hackintosh. I've been using OS X. In my previous video, I went over to how you could use, with OS X, you can use Windows like right next to it. Your apps can all integrate with your OS X apps. And the both together make a fabulous experience. But if I were to choose one, it'd be OS X. But that kind of got me thinking. That last video, I kind of said, I love having them both together. But then I started thinking that, right now the Apple people really have to adjust to Microsoft because in schools, workplaces, the main operating system right now really is Windows. But with the patterns I've seen in Microsoft lately, over the past couple years, even the past couple months, it might change, I think, in the next few years. Maybe in the next decade, maybe Apple will have the upper hand, and people that go for Microsoft will have to adjust to Apple. So that's just kind of like my theory, and that's pretty much what this video is all about. So let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to start with Apple. Again, I'm not talking strictly about OS X. I'm really talking about OS X and iOS. So first I want to say I think Mac is going to gain developers. And the reason I say this is because since Apple released this guy right here, they've had millions, if like hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of developers. And if you really think about it, it's a genius plan because before the iPhone, Macs had a lower market share than they do now. And it's genius the way they did it because they opened up the App Store and firmware 2.0 of the iPhone. And that really, since this was the first, I think the first modern smartphone, the iPhone, and it tied in all those developers, it's like it's the biggest app store in the world right now. And people know that. If you think Apple, now you think App Store. You don't really think OS X, you think App Store. And the App Store got Apple billions of dollars, billions of developers, like millions of developers, millions of dollars. Like it got them a lot. And that's people like they know they can make money off it. So there's a lot of people that will go to college for software and they can work right from their house because they know how to properly code. You could take Apple classes. You could do all kinds of stuff that's Apple exclusive. And now, getting away from the App Store for a second, Apple already has Steam now. So that's gaming that could be taken away from Windows. Eventually, games, I think Apple will have good enough GPUs that can handle the games that Windows. Now, the big difference between Windows and OS X is OpenGL versus DX10. But going back to the developer thing now, if Apple got hundreds of thousands of developers on the iPhone, they've now recently announced the Mac App Store. So if people already know how to code for the iPhone and you have to have a Mac to use the SDK, they have a Mac anyway and they can automatically develop for the Mac. And that is the genius behind it. That was, I think, Apple's master plan. That was Steve Jobs' dream, and he woke up the next morning and realized that this is what we're going to do. We're going to get all these developers, have them code for us, for our amazing phone, and then we could use that power, all those millions of people, to boost our operating system. And I believe that with the popularity Apple's gained in the past 5 years from this guy right here, that a lot of people, a lot of developers, will not only code for Windows, they will code for OS X as well. And this includes video games, because like I just said, Steam has already made its way, and that's a big deal. So if Apple just throws some bigger, badder GPUs in their systems, I think a lot of people will pick up OpenGL instead of DX10. And the reason DX10 kind of sucks is because that it's proprietary to Microsoft. You can't use DX10 games on Windows or on OS X. and that's a downfall because a lot of people DX10s. I guess it's easier to code. Like I'm not a software guy, I wouldn't really know, but I guess it's just easier to work with. And I think that if people really see the power that OS 10 can pack with OpenGL, like OpenGL's been doing stuff like I said, I don't really know specifics here. I'm going from my experience, what I've heard other people say, what other people like have proven that OpenGL has done stuff for years that DX10 is just kind of getting around to. So if developers really get behind, like even EA on the iPhone, EA, Hasbro, they've developed games for this guy. So they can develop games for Mac OS 10 too. And that's the beauty behind all this stuff, is that Apple is going to gain hundreds and thousands of developers for their operating system from the iPhone. And that's, where they brought in that it's like a big circle. Once you join the Apple ecosystem, you can develop for the iPhone, the iPad, and the Mac. And that's the beauty behind it. So how do I think this will really affect Microsoft? Well, if people don't develop for both, I think a few people will say, screw Windows, I'm done developing for Windows, because from my view, Windows plays catch up a lot, and so does their operating system for their phones. You see stuff that Apple has, even as something as simple as like Spotlight. Windows search in XP was god awful, but then in Vista they kind of took the cue from Apple there, and they put that little integrated search bar. Just little things like that. Their operating systems are playing catch up with Apple's. Their phones are playing catch up with Apple's. Even now with Windows Phone 7, it doesn't have copy and paste. iPhone didn't have that for years, and people bash it that it wasn't a smartphone, that it was retarded. But then Microsoft goes and does the same thing. It's like they don't open their eyes and learn from other people's mistakes. But as soon as something else cool comes out, they have to adapt it and put it in their thing, in their operating system. I just don't think Microsoft innovates the way they used to. There's just no real innovation there, and they're going to lose millions of dollars because even now with Windows 7, they had to have Vista, which was a huge flop, and then they got to what Windows Vista should have been with Windows 7. Windows 7 is not a new operating system. It's what Vista should have been. You can deny that all you want. Like if you're a really die-hard Microsoft fan, I don't know what to tell you if you think that's a lie, but Windows 7 is what they wanted Vista to be. And they can't afford to keep doing that. They can't afford second tries all the time. With OS 10, even like Snow Leopard compared to Leopard, it wasn't a big deal. I still don't really think it is. But the difference between that and what Windows was is Snow Leopard didn't cost almost $200. They sold Snow Leopard for $30 because they knew that it wasn't that big of an upgrade. But Windows, they have billions of dollars right in their pocket already, and they still want to charge $200 for what Vista should have been. It's absolutely ridiculous. Microsoft, I think, is getting greedy, and they're getting lazy. But Apple continues to innovate, and you can take that you can take that however you want, but that's what I really firmly believe in. And over time, I think this will turn people away from Microsoft. I think I think like last week, Steve Ballmer sold like millions of dollars of his own stock, of Microsoft stock, and he has millions of dollars in his bank account now. So what does that tell you? Do they know something that we don't? Like, why else would you sell your own stock? That does not show faith in your product. So I think Apple really is like the innovator of the decade here. In the last decade, they've gained some serious market share, and they've worked for it. They deserve all of it, and I think they even deserve more. So I'm not just like a Apple fanboy or anything like that. Like I love Apple, but I have my reasons to love Apple. If I could afford a real Mac, then I would definitely have a real Mac. But even on my custom build, my Hackintosh, I can't even boot into Windows as much anymore because OS 10 is just so much more fluid. My apps don't crash. I don't have to worry about viruses nearly as much as I did with Windows. So Apple just offers, they have higher prices, but in the end you get what you pay for. That's pretty much all I have to say. So just like a recap, I think in the next decade, people will be turned off from Microsoft and turned on to Apple because of the way Apple works, because you can make money sitting at home on your computer, because you can make, if you sell an app for $1 and it's a really nice hit, you can make thousands in a week. And so I think that's just the magic of Apple. So what do you guys think? Like I said, I'd love to hear your video responses, your comments. Do you think I'm nuts, or do you think that, I might actually have a point here? So like I said, that's what I firmly believe in. Go ahead, please comment video response at CPU Kid on Twitter. Um, that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching.